Good morning and welcome to Thoughts and Updates for this week. I'm just next to a flat, so I'm going to move swiftly once I've started. I am here in the next part of the Trails and Tales in Kirkintilloch at the Minor Welfare Institute, which is a building which is kind of hidden and off the beaten track. If I turn round, you'll see that there is a main road just there that goes past, but it's slightly off the beaten track, the Miners Welfare Institute. Growing up, I spent a lot of time working with my dad, going round various clubs in Ayrshire which were based on the mining industry, because clubs were established and set up in order to provide the working men and women of that industry a place to go to for their social and leisure needs. And it became hugely popular, and my father, who was selling alcohol round the pubs and clubs, had a roaring trade, but at least a reasonable one, which allowed him to sell on behalf of places like Haddo's and so on that were his employers at each particular time. And it's quite an extensive building, and it represents a bit of a memory for this place, where mining for coal, for alum and also for iron led to some industries being part of the local employers, and of course over time the last pit colliery in Cardowan closed in 1983, which was over in Steps, and there were loads of other places where they mined round about and provided employment for people. The closest to here, it closed in 1968, and of course it led to other industries and other places of employment for people. And I think that probably that, more than anything, is the lesson of having a heavy industry in a local area, that it leads to the opportunities for people to have a number of things in their community. Small shops, the corner shop, the news agents, which are based upon the employment of each large factory or large institution. And when that closes, the ripple effect right through a community is quite extensive. So here we have an example of a fairly extensive building just off the beaten track, which is a significant part of the local community. A lot of functions still happen in the Miners Club. In fact, the only time I've been in there has been for a function. And it's a reminder to people, I think, that the past still has a significant effect on the present. And when we look at the loss of heavy industry within Scotland in particular, I come from Ayrshire, where it was devastated by the closure of mines, the collieries, particularly in the hinterlands going into the places like Cumnock, New Cumnock, Auchinleck and so on, or in Fife, which led to a great economic depression, the like of which we have not seen since then. But after furlough is finished, I reckon there's a possibility we'll see it once more. So this week, it's been an interesting week once again. A couple of things have happened which are going to be part of my focus for today, but also in terms of the writing for boxing. Ringside Report, Brad, my American publisher, has got a weekend of being inducted into a Boxing Hall of Fame, so there's a little bit of pressure off there. But I am looking at Killie Lane, who lost his life recently, to update the tribute that I'd already done, to look at a man who certainly contributed a huge amount to the British boxing scene. I've also done my usual Talking Boz stuff, which I've sent out, looking at the boxing of this weekend and last weekend, and previewing Inui's battle overnight, which continued the same story of what a fantastic fighter that young man happens to be, but also reflecting upon the loss that Lewis Ritson had this time last weekend. For football, I'm going to be writing about Edinburgh City's decision to have Friday night football rather than Saturday afternoon, allowing people in the Edinburgh area to have a choice of not just following their big team, but also lending their support on a Friday night to the smallest professional SPFL team in the Edinburgh area at Edinburgh City, and we'll also be continuing looking at how Mr. Clark is doing, the man with the durest face in Scottish football. On top of that, what I've been looking to do is to get my finger out in terms of reviewing the Macbeths, Hindu Tales, Braw Tales. These are all performances online that I will be reviewing and sticking up on Fringe Review's website over the next couple of days or week ahead. So, once again, busy. What have I learned this week? I think for me there's been two significant events that are massively important. I'll come to the most significant one at the end, but Northern Ireland politics has once again hit the front page. I've been interested in Northern Ireland politics since I was a little boy, partly because living in the west coast of Scotland it's hard to escape it, but on top of that, I think what's massively important for the whole of the United Kingdom, it's not just that the Democratic Unionist Party was able to hold the Conservative government up before the last election, but also because the threat of violence is significantly always in the background. And what I found rather astonishing, looking at there was an event in Newtonards, I think it was, over the week, where the former Labour Cabinet Minister Kate Hoey attended, because she's originally from Antrim and a Northern Ireland girl, a woman of some substance, and she was there with radical unionists talking about the Irish border and the border in the sea that's been created, which is casting for many people in Ulster in Northern Ireland their province adrift. And I've been looking at trying to explain why this province happens to be so important in British politics for Ringside Report, and I think the major significance of this is that there's a possibility that we will see a return to violence. And a return to violence isn't the likes of throwing bricks at people, it's the return to violence where people are taken out and shot dead by paramilitaries, terrorists who use terror in order to promote their point of view. And that is terrifying. I was in Belfast in the 1980s and wandered around a British city whilst being protected by the army, seeing army patrols and Land Rovers, and indeed people on the streets wandering round with weapons loaded with live ammunition on a street in the 20th century, late 20th century, was significant for me, mundane and normal for everybody else. And therefore Northern Ireland and dear old Mr. Poots lasting but 3 weeks, the possibility that Sir Geoffrey Donaldson is going to take over the DUP and take over without any election isn't terrifying in the same way that the violence is. But the Democratic Unionist Party have a fairly right-wing agenda. The fact that Ian Paisley was able to spend time as First Minister alongside Sinn Féin was one of the most significant events in the history of the British Isles. His successors, I don't think, are necessarily made of the same stern stuff, and the ability to somehow compromise. The fact he did was not just astonishing, it was absolutely the core of why people put faith in his administration. So we watch on nervously. Second thing, of course, I've learned is the fact that Scottish football is resilient. They have the ability to go to Wembley and come away with a draw. I think that the game against Czech Republic, I think Steve Clarke has some right in his head insofar as, yes, I think that there was a bit over the top in terms of some of the criticism, but the fact of the matter is that we were outplayed. The fact that Billy Gilmour went in, and a very clever comment by Steve Clarke that Steve O'Donnell was the best in the park, closely followed by Billy Gilmour, made his point very well. A man who has defended his team and absolutely made sure that people know particularly in his dressing room, he has that back, was fascinating. But we went to Wembley and we came away with a result. Tuesday night. Now, people of my generation will know that we will go to Tuesday night and there's a possibility that we will come away with glorious failure. It will be 2-2, 3-3. 5 minutes to go, the Croatians will score with a fluke goal or whatever. That's what we have become used to, that we become bridesmaids every single time and not managed to get to the wedding. The wedding, of course, is to get out of the group stages for the first time in our history. Graham Souness said that actually getting to the World Cups and the European Championships was actually our World Cup final. Is it this time round? I don't know. But one of the things I do know is that Steve Clarke, alongside Andy Roxburgh and Craig Brown, are the right choice for a country who is not in the top echelons of world football. So getting the likes of a Sir Alex Ferguson or somebody who manages in the English Premier League, who happens to be running a team that's in the top echelons, is the wrong choice. What we need are people who understand not their place, but how to manage within limited resources in comparison to the rest of the world. So, Tuesday night, I know where I'll be. Where will you be? I'll be watching, I'll be cheering, I'll be hoping, I'll be believing that somehow the history and my experience is blown apart by a former Kilmarnock manager. I hope he does it, because it's no coming home, England. Fitba is coming home. Till next week. Bye for now.